Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know it has been 4 years that I haven't made any Go related videos. The reason I left was because at the time I was struggling a lot in my life. I was fighting for survival, trying to find a job. I got fired twice. In the process, I was working here and there. Eventually, I found an amazing company that I'm working for. I have been with them for 3 years as a software developer. So I am at a more stable stage of my life, and I think it is time for me to pick up my passion once again. I'd like to apologize to my subscribers and my Patreon members. You have subscribed to the channel, but you haven't seen any production, especially the Patreon members who have subscribed to my Patreon account and was very inconsistent towards the end at making videos. So what I'm going to do moving forward with the channel is that I'm going to make one video per week, and I am going to post one video on YouTube, and the next week I'll post the video on Patreon only. So what's going to happen is if you sign up for the Patreon membership, you will be able to watch one video per week from me. But that's just to support my work. But if you just want to watch on YouTube channel, no problem at all. You will get one video every 2 weeks. And to compensate for my past Patreon members, I'll give you a 2-year free membership. So yeah, if you like to support my work, feel free to sign up for the Patreon membership as well to enjoy more content. And I think I currently have better audio equipment and better editing skills as well. And I think the content will be higher quality moving forward. And about the content itself, it could be a Joseki, it could be a full game, it could be just any content of my choice. Whatever I've seen that I find interesting, I'll just make a video and present it. So it's not like in the past where I do many playlists and stuff. Right now it will be more flexible content, but I promise it's going to be very interesting and helpful. Okay, so let's dive into today's topic. I would like to present you Joseki. So a lot of times we see Black's big knight formation and we wonder what we can do about it. And one of the strongest moves that AI suggests is to attach directly at 4-4. Now this move might not be for everybody, and if you just want to play a simple Joseki like this, it's very solid for both sides, and there's absolutely nothing wrong, and you can just play like that. But today I want to give you a full guide on this attach. So if you play as Black, you know how to deal with it, and if you want to play this as White, you also know all the variations moving forward. Against this move, Black has two choices. One is to hane on the outside, and one is to hane on the inside. Let's first look at the first main variation, that is for Black to hane on the inside. Against this move, if White cuts in the corner, this is not a great variation because Black can simply extend out. And against this, White is in a very awkward situation. If White ataris, Black extends, and then White pushes through, this variation simply doesn't work for White because White has no follow-up and White is losing a lot on the left side because of the two captures. So that would be a terrible idea for White. A more reasonable way to play as White right now is probably just to live the corner, which is also not great. So White ataris and then extends. As we can see, White lives a very small corner and Black has a very strong outside. This is okay for the end game, but this is terrible for if you just have 10 moves on the board. Now, I want to follow up a little bit on the corner because I think 95% of players are playing this corner wrong. even if it looks really small. So the correct move for black to play is to block directly. White makes a tiger's mouth. And now, here is where most players make a mistake as black. That is to directly block here. And you have probably seen this many times in your games, and you think that's the perfect variation for both sides. But actually, by blocking here, black lost 2 points. And that's a mistake, I would say. So white obviously is going to live, black extends, and white extends. Now, as we can see, white's corner has 4 points. Let me now present the correct variation. When white makes the tiger's mouth, black should extend first. Against this move, if white wants to live, there's only one way to live, that is to play the Tsuji at 1-2. Black now blocks, and then white completes the 2 eyes by playing another 1-2. Black Ataris, and white connects. Now, as we can see, everything being the same, white has now only 2 points. So that's why I said by blocking first, you literally just lost 2 points. And I think a lot of times you don't even realize that is happening. And of course, black doesn't have to Atari on the first line right now, because you can save it as a co-threat for later. So the correct move for for white to play is to hane on the outside. Black Ataris, white connects, black extends, and now white cuts in the corner. Now, against this cut, the first thing that black cannot play is to Atari on the inside, because white will block, black captures, and white plays a 3-space extension. And this formation is perfect for white, and black has a over-concentrated corner. So this is not acceptable for black. So against the cut, black has 2 options. One is to Atari on the inside, like this, or just turn on the outside. I personally recommend you to turn on the outside. Against this move, white cannot block, because when you block, black can simply cut. And this is just broken for white. This is not going to work. Similarly, white cannot Atari on the inside, because after this variation, black can capture white's 3 stones. If you try to live the corner, I can just capture. And there's really no ladder here, because black can capture white's group like this. So this is also a terrible outcome, just like before, where white got a very small corner and black has tremendous influence towards the outside. It's simply not a great trait for white. So the main variation is for white to just make a good shape, and then black captures. And if white plays the tiger's mouth, this is a gote, so white cannot play this, because if you play like that, black can immediately attack, and while you run out in whatever way, black can just keep putting pressure on white's group and expand towards the bottom. This is also a terrible outcome for white. The correct move is for white to simply play a nice shape on the 4th line to complete the Joseki. So this Joseki is an equal position for both sides, of course, because black has a very solidified corner, while white was able to suppress black's influence of the corner while making a small base on this side. So that's the main variation, and it's not that hard to memorize. This is actually very intuitive. The second main variation is for black to Atari towards the inside. White extends, black blocks, and white now pushes on a 5th line to settle his 3 stones. Black blocks, and white pushes 2 times, and then makes a side extension. So this would complete the main variation, but I do want to talk a little bit about the specific follow-ups that white can have on top. So let's say black continues developing in the opening. In the corner, white has two ways to exploit the weaknesses that black has. The first way is to Atari. When black connects, white can make a second line move to basically cause a little bit of trouble for black. If black wants to play safe, he will block, and then we can make a side extension. Now, as we can see, black's corner is significantly reduced. Another variation is for white to peep over here. That's also a valid way of reducing black's corner. Black, of course, needs to prevent the double Atari. White now crawls out. Now, here, black has two choices. One is to just capture, and white makes a two-space extension. And later on, so black, it's kind of awful for black right now, because if black captures the two stones, later on we have the Kosumi, and this is just a tough spot. For example, whatever black plays, white was able to get these two stones for free, and later on maybe just extends back. And now we can see black's corner is a lot smaller than what we thought it would be. So this is one way of playing for both sides. The other way is for black to hane on the outside. Now, against this move, white can simply white can simply block on the second line. This is a sente against black. Black needs to respond right now, because if you play somewhere else, white will connect. And now there is Atari here. Black cannot allow that, and therefore white can hane. This is a liberty fight where black's gonna lose because it's a 4 versus 3. So black must capture the two groups. And as we can see, that white is able to get a very important move that significantly strengthens white's territory here. So if white plays an extra move, this pretty much becomes territory for white. So there are two interesting ways of suppressing black's corner, and that's why we call it a Joseki, because black's corner, it looks very terrifying, like it's huge, but actually there are some follow-ups that white can do to limit its potential. The second main variation is for black to hane on the outside, and this variation is significantly more complicated and does require some memorization on your side if you want to master it. But I'll try to do my best to make sure you understand the variations. Black hanes on the outside, and white needs to hane immediately at 3-3. Now that's the only correct move to play. If you extend, this is not a great idea. So of course there's a lot of variations following this, but I just want to illustrate you the main idea. So the idea is for black to extend towards the corner, and then try to push white towards the bottom while building territory on the bottom. So that's the main idea for black. Let's say, for example, white jumps, and then black plays a move to strengthen the stone on the left. After the exchange, white has no choice but to run towards the bottom, where black is gaining a lot of territory, and this white group will run for a very long time. And this could lead to a very bad position for white. So for example, if we're gonna play a few more moves, let's say white push, black extends, and this happens, then we can keep pressuring white. And this is just a very uncomfortable situation for white. So white pushes, so we can just jump out. And in the process, black gained so much territory. White still has no eyes. Even if white is safe for now, this black group is extremely flexible and it's hard to attack. So if you go for a counter attack, I can just easily give myself a very nice shape while counter attacking you, right? Like I can play like this, and as we can see, white has to keep running towards the bottom, and black keeps building on the bottom, and black already has a lot of territory. So white cannot play anything like extending. The correct move is to absolutely play the hane. Against this move, black's only option is to Atari. There's a side variation which is not great for black, is to Atari on top. White connects, black connects. But now white can simply lift the corner with the attach. Black blocks, white extends, and now black has a very nice Tsuji to fix both cutting points at the same time. But I mean, at black started with 2 stones, but now white is easily just taking the corner away from black. And the black's outside is not that strong because even if both cutting points are not working for white, later on white still has very annoying peeping move like this to make black feel uncomfortable. So the main line is for black to Atari inside. White extends and black connects. White Ataris, black extends. And the correct variation is for white to Atari here. Black Ataris, white extends. Black Ataris again. And white hanes, black hanes. So this is the main variation for this branch. It looks quite confusing and we'll dive into it a little bit later. I just want to explore some branch other side possible variations that are not working for white. So you might be wondering at this point, well, can white just simply extend? It looks pretty interesting because we're trying to capture the stone here, and we're also trying to capture the 2 stones over here. So against this move, black has a very good way to punish white's mistake. That is to clamp on the outside. So white blocks, and now black extends on the first line. Right now, white has to escape the 2 stones, so he turns, Atari, and then Atari again. So we can see now white has a very ugly shape. But white is wondering, well, what's going on with the Liberty fight in the corner? Well, black now has a Tsuji to completely capture white. White turns, black blocks. And now this is 2 liberties versus 3. So white is going to lose the group in the corner. And black has tremendous influence towards the left side. Not to say that white has a very ugly shape that has no eye and needs to settle. So this is a bad variation for white, obviously, from the look of it. Another choice is for white to maybe block here, but of course black can just turn. Now, as we can see, black has no problem. He has a very complete and perfect corner, but white is cut into halves, and both 2 stones are very weak, and then I am not sure how white's going to deal with this very tough situation. So, of course, this is a very good variation for black as well. Okay. So we have explored why some of the side variations don't work for white. Let's go through the main variation once again. It's a little bit confusing, so I'm going to start again from the beginning. White Ataris, black extend. The flip Atari, the correct move. Black extends, white extends. And now black captures the very vital stone on the 3rd line. White hanes, black hanes as well. Here there are 2 main variations, but let's present the first one. White turns, black captures the stone on the 3rd line. It's important for you to not turn here. This is not the correct move. It looks very good for now, but it doesn't fix the problem in the corner. The corner is still very weak because white's 2nd line move is a sente. So making the corner very dangerous for black. So to get rid of the aji, black should capture the stone while sacrificing a little bit of the outside. White double hanes, black Atari, white connects, black connects, and now white ladders the stone. So at this point, this is the end of the Joseki. It's a slightly worse position for black, and this is why you don't see this variation a lot in professional games. The reason is white is able to ladder black stone and then obtain a very strong left side, while there's still some issues for black in the corner. So for example, black try to help the ladder, white captures, and black keeps going. I just want to show you in the corner that white still has the extension. Black blocks, white has a Tsuji. Black can capture white with a very nice first line move. If white turns, black can just turn here. And as you can see that black will capture white. However, this makes white's first line move like this as a sente, which makes the left side extremely hard to invade at some point. So the Joseki ends here, but personally, I wouldn't really call this a Joseki. I would just call it a slightly worse variation for black, because black had the 2 stones to start with. There's some problems in the corner, and then black's outside is not very strong because there's still a move missing here. And this is a fantastic outcome for white. So I don't recommend you to play this variation as black. But this leads to a very interesting conclusion. That is why you don't see very often this hane on the outside. More players would choose hane inside, and that's the main reason. Okay, so the second main variation from this main branch is for white to double hane directly without ataring on top. And this variation is drastically different because white did not exchange the atari here. Against this move, black obviously will double atari. White turns, and then black captures the stone on the third line. White extends. So now black cannot rush to save the 2 stones over here because these 2 stones are also in trouble. And of course, black cannot just rush to save the 2 stones because this will be a horrible result for black because white is simply too strong over here. The correct move for black to play is a little bit surprising. That is for black to atari on the second line. So against this move, white cannot keep extending. He has to capture. Let's say white extends. Black now will sacrifice this 2 stones over here by turning. White captures, and black has a Tsuji that is just to play a very solid looking move over here. Now this will be the end of a variation, but this leaves white in a very awkward situation because if white wants to live, he has to play a very inefficient move in a corner and tries to live the corner. But he can't really afford to do that right now because the corner is too small. But right now, white is at the risk of being sealed and then being forced to live in the corner. So if white doesn't want to be sealed, he has to play moves on the outside. For example, I'm just illustrating the idea. If white plays like this, true that black did not seal him, but look at what black gained on the left side. It's a tremendous influence towards the left side. And now black can settle his group by playing an extension here. Now, this is a bad position for white actually, because white always needs to spend a move in the corner to be completely safe. There's always a chance of this group being sealed inside. So this worry is a huge cost for white. And black can make great use of this, I guess I call it insecurity of white throughout this game. So the reason that this happened was because of this exchange of the second line versus first line, giving white a terrible shape. And and this leads to a not very great position for white. So white cannot play like this. So the mistake is for white to extend. Right now, the correct Joseki move is for white to simply capture these 2 stones and let black connect underneath. Black Ataris, white connects, and then black jumps out. So at first glance, you might be wondering, well, this is terrible for white because white only has a group that has one eye on the outside. Black has captured a stone on the third line, and black has a territory that connects from side to side and the corner. What does white do here? White needs to follow up with this move. So if your opponent is not very strong, this could lead to a game over for him actually. So let's say, for example, black decides to push and cut. This will be an instant knockout for black because white now has a very vicious sequence. That is to wedge here. Black Ataris and white can throw in first. And this throw in is extremely important. You can't miss this throw in. Black captures, white Ataris, black connects. White has a Tsuji now to Atari. Black has to capture, white Ataris again, black connects. And finally, this is a resigning moment for black. So the push and cut would lead to a game over for black. Black's correct move is to crawl on the third line to be safe. White extends and black crawls, and then black plays a small knight to be safe, because if you allow white to seal you over here, you always have to worry about the corner. So it's better for black to just come out and be perfectly safe. But the question remains, white is still in a terrible position if he just lets black get all the corners and sides. So to follow up and achieve equality, white needs to exploit black's corner. White Ataris, black connects, and white now hanes. At this point, this becomes a more or less interesting life and death problem for my audience. If black just blocks, this would be a mistake because now white can Atari and play a Tsuji in the corner, and there's no way for black to avoid a co-fight. Black can start a ko this way, or black can simply Atari, and this would also lead to a ko-fight. But black obviously cannot accept that. The correct way to clean kill white is to clamp at 2-2. White Ataris, black connects, and now white connects. If black extends, this would kill white, but this would be a mistake because white can now push, black blocks. White has a very useful first line extension. If black wants to kill, he has to turn, and now white can extend out. This is threatening the first line connection over here, so black has to block it. White can now take advantage of the liberty shortage that black has and play on the outside. And because of the shortage of liberty, black has to respond many times. And this leads to a tremendous influence for white on the left side. So this would be a great position for white. So where did black play wrong here? The main variation is for black to hane. So this is a Tsuji. This would also kill the corner. The difference between this one and the previous variation is that white's extension on the first line is not a sente anymore. So what white can do is to just kind of take advantage of the insecurity by playing the approach. This is more or less a sente because it threatens to drag out the second line stone and cause problems for black. If black plays away, white will immediately drag it out, and this could lead to a very awful situation for black, where black has to go back and capture the corner. So black's correct move is to just be safe and capture the stone. And this would be the end of the Joseki, where white is able to gain some compensation by having this exchange and also building an influence over here. And later on, of course, this is white sente. So white is white pretty much has no weakness on the outside over here. So as we can see, at this point, white is able to achieve equality by exploiting black's corner. And there's quite a bit of memorization to do, and it's kind of fun to kind of know how the corner is going to play out. Okay, so we have been through a lot of variations today. Let's quickly summarize and recap. For the hane on the inside, white hanes, black ataris, and then we lead to this main variation. The first variation is for black to turn inside, where white can push on the outside and then make a side extension. In this way, black seems to have a very big corner, but later on, white has different techniques to exploit the corner and reduce it, while white has a very nice extension towards the bottom. So this is a more or less equal position in a Joseki variation. The more common variation is for black to turn, white jumps, black captures, and then white plays the two-space extension. This is a very simple variation, and I really recommend my audience to use it because it's easy to understand. There's not a lot of memorization. It's just a simple game moving forward. So this is the two main variations for the inner hane for black. And of course, we talked about the more complicated outer hane, and that requires quite a bit of memorization and also understanding of each variation. White hanes, black ataris, white extends, and then we lead to this main variation. White hanes and black hanes back. Here, there are two main variations. White can simply double hane, looking for a very fancy Joseki. Black double ataris extends. Black has to remember to atari on the second line, or else there's no way to continue. White captures, black ataris connects, jumps out, and after a couple exchanges, white can take advantage of black's corner and then play the atari and hane. Black kills, and white, after a few exchanges, plays a move on the outside, threatening to drag the stone on the second line. Black simply plays by being safe by capturing the stone on the second line. This is more or less an equal position where white has a very nice wall over here and then also a nice exchange between the third line and the second line. And all these is thanks to the corner maneuvering from white. And of course, we look at, so this double hane directly is a little bit less common. We also looked at the very main variation, which I recommend for white player. Black captures, white hanes, black ataris, and then just ladder the stone. This leads to a slightly better position for white, and this is the reason why you don't see the outer hane for black very often these days in professional games. So, all right, everyone. This is everything that I wanted to present to you today. I hope you enjoyed it and can use this Joseki in your own games, and hopefully you win some games with it. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Also, check out my Patreon page if you want to support my work. Once again, I'm so glad to be back and making Go game videos. It's been a while, and I'm really excited and happy to be back. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one.